Well, let's look at understandability, and understandability is exactly that, that people can understand the web page, that the website does what you expect it to do every time, and that there's enough input assistance so you can input good data. So what are the errors that you find, Mark?
One of the biggest ones in understandability is the form. So when you're filling in a form and you're basically you've entered information and you go to the submit button, you find generally that you get some error message saying, please attend to the following items. And you're not sure what the items are because they're actually coloured and there's no textual reference or textual messages to say, okay, the date of birth or whatever is not correct. And sometimes, it would be nice to have that sort of indication what's actually not filled in correctly.
Yeah, I've got
Um,
one for you. What about dates? You go to enter a date, and like here in Australia, it's day slash month slash year. But sometimes you find it the opposite and you don't know, and you get an error and you think, well, I've entered the date, but because there's nothing to tell you how they want the date entered, and don't forget, date pickers are not always accessible. So if we can't access the date picker and there's no indication of the format of the date in the label or something that we can access, it's an issue.
mm,
And it's not just for people with no sight, it's all types of people struggle with that one.
yeah, I agree. I think that comes down to actually getting good instructions, and sometimes forms lack instructions. Yeah, there's sometimes where you'll get uh, little arrows that point to certain parts of forms, and yeah, that can be a bit misleading or difficult for anyone to follow.
Yeah,
Where if you have the arrows and some text on their labels, that's more beneficial, I think. Yeah, I was doing a survey which was a rather important one by the Queensland government, and I was not able to finish that survey, unfortunately, because certain radio buttons weren't, clearly grouped properly, and that's another big problem.
yeah,
So, if the government is doing that in their surveys, it's not really fair on the people that they're meant to be representing, because how could they say they've actually got good data from people if their survey collection tools
yeah.
that being their pages is not accessible?
That's it. I've got one last one for you in this area. What about abbreviations? You find that abbreviation and you've got no idea what it means because it's never been expanded out in the page, or it might be on another page, but you haven't accessed that page. You've gone direct to the page that you want to look at.
I think if you're going to use acronyms, you should really have a glossary page.
Mm.
Um, that's what I tell people to do. So, I often think that you have you can have an acronym, for whatever and then you might have a link, and that link, so you could have ABC as a link, for instance. And if you
Mm.
hit enter on that, it takes you to a glossary page that explains what ABC means.
Yeah.
And that sometimes, I mean, it's a bit of work, but I think if you're using a lot of acronyms, it's probably useful. Otherwise, yeah, you could do exactly what you suggest, and that's expand it out for the first instance, and then refer to it. But that also requires that you would do that on every separate page,
Mm.
that you have that acronym there. So that's yeah, there's something to think about. Um, Acronyms are not. I mean, they're a problem in the sense that if you don't know what your meaning with acronyms, you have to look up what they are and all that sort of stuff. And that could be a problem. But yeah,